In the late 1990s, in the quiet suburbs of Chesterbrook, the Austin family seemed to live the American dream. Jack Austin was a successful 45-year-old real estate developer, and he recently married Sarah, who was a 38-year-old elementary school teacher. But Sarah had a child from her previous marriage. Her name was Lily, and she was 17 years old. Jack had always been a charmer. His silver hair and beard, together with his confident smile, won over many clients in his years of climbing the corporate ladder. When he met Sarah at a local charity event, he was immediately captivated by her. They instantly fell in love with each other, and their romance culminated in a beautiful wedding just 8 months later. Sarah was still healing from a bitter divorce that happened 3 years prior and saw Jack as her second chance at happiness. She was drawn to his stability, his success, and most importantly, to his clear devotion to her and Lily. As a single mother, Sarah had always put Lily first, and she was thrilled to see Jack embrace her daughter so willingly. Lily was a high school senior, with dreams of becoming a journalist once she finished high school. She was initially skeptical of her mother's new relationship because she watched her parents' marriage crumble and was afraid of letting another man into her life. However, Jack's charm worked its magic on her, too. She immediately got to like him and accepted him as her new dad. The first few months of their new life together seemed perfect. Their big house became a hub of dinner parties and family game nights. To the outside world, the Austins were the perfect family. Neighbors would often comment on how lucky they all were to have found each other. But beneath the surface, something unsettling was brewing. Jack found his gaze lingering on Lily a little too long. He started noticing things he shouldn't, like the way her hair caught the sunlight, the sound of her laugh, and the curve of her figure. He told himself it was natural to admire his stepdaughter's beauty, that he was just proud of the young woman she was becoming. Yet deep down, he knew his thoughts were far from normal. Lily was still trying to understand the complex emotions of adolescence, and she also began to see Jack in a different light as well. His attention made her feel special and understood in a way her own father never could. She found herself dressing up more when he was around, laughing a little louder at his jokes, and so on. The line was crossed on a rainy Tuesday night in April 1997. Sarah was away from home at a teacher's conference, leaving Jack and Lily alone in the house for a couple of days. A violent lightning strike knocked out the power in the house, making everything dark and scary. Since Lily was always afraid of the storms, especially if the power was out, she immediately sought comfort in Jack's presence. They sat in the living room, illuminated only by candlelight, while the rain was pouring outside. Jack prepared them both a cup of orange juice because he knew that Lily loved drinking it. While they were sipping their drinks, they started talking about all sorts of things. The conversation flowed easily, touching on Lily's college aspirations, her frustrations with some high school drama, and her dreams for the future. Jack found himself mesmerized by Lily's lively character. But then when a particularly loud clap of thunder made Lily jump in fear, Jack instinctively pulled her close. And the moment their eyes met, something electric passed between them. No one could say who leaned in first, but suddenly they were kissing. It was passionate, desperate, and terribly wrong. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and confused by what just happened. The next morning brought a wave of shame and guilt. Jack and Lily avoided each other, making awkward excuses to stay out of the same room. But as the days passed, the memory of that kiss burned in both of their minds. 2 weeks later, after a particularly stressful day at work, Jack found Lily alone in the backyard. Sarah was at a late parent-teacher conference. Their eyes met, and without a single word, they fell into each other's arms. This time, there was no storm to blame and no darkness to hide behind. They gave in to their desires, fully aware of the magnitude of their betrayal. From that point on, Jack and Lily's affair escalated rapidly. They took advantage of their free time whenever they could. They rushed to empty rooms in the house when no one was looking, and they had secret meetings in places outside of their home. Jack became obsessed, and his thoughts were constantly revolving around Lily. He neglected his work, canceled his meetings, and missed his deadlines, all to spend more time alone with her. Although Lily was having conflicting emotions about this, she felt desired and mature, which she really liked. But on the other hand, she was also filled with guilt over betraying her mother. She began to withdraw from her friends, making all kinds of excuses to avoid going with them. Her grades started to slip as she found it harder to concentrate on anything except her secret relationship with Jack. They often texted on their phone. Their texts ranged from talking about love to organizing their next place where they could have together. Both knew the devastating consequences if they were ever discovered, but the thrill of their forbidden love took over them. Meanwhile, Sarah remained oblivious to this. She attributed changes in them to the normal stresses of work and teenage life. She even tried planning more activities to try to recapture the family life they all shared in the beginning. But it was all in vain. Her suspicions started growing. She noticed that every time she would enter a room with both of them there, the conversations between them would stop abruptly, which was really strange to her. Then one Saturday afternoon, while Jack was at a business meeting and Lily was supposedly studying at the library, Sarah decided to clean Lily's messy room. While she was changing the sheets, she found her secret phone that Lily used to chat with Jack. With trembling hands, Sarah turned on the phone, and what she found shattered her world. There were hundreds of explicit messages between Jack and Lily, and plans for their secret meetings. This was overwhelming for Sarah, and she was crushed. But then she heard the front door open and Jack's voice calling out, and in that moment, something inside her snapped. She stormed downstairs with the phone held in her hand. "How could you?" she screamed, showing the phone to Jack. "She's my daughter. She's a child." Jack started thinking of excuses. He said that Lily seduced him and that it only happened once, that he was weak but it meant nothing. Then Lily walked in and she realized immediately what was happening. She tried to explain, but Sarah cut her off. She didn't want to hear any of it. Jack started begging for forgiveness, falling to his knees on the kitchen floor. While Lily was torn between Jack and her mother, and in that moment of confusion, she declared her love for Jack, saying that they were meant to be together. Then Sarah, without a word, grabbed her keys and ran from the house. She drove aimlessly for hours while she was trying to process what just happened. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Jack realized his life was falling apart. He was about to lose everything: his wife, his reputation, and potentially his freedom if Sarah decided to press charges. In his twisted mind, he started coming up with a plan that would allow him to be with Lily and at the same time eliminate the threat of Sarah. That's why Jack reached out to Sarah and begged her to meet him at their lake house to talk things through. Sarah was still in emotional turmoil, but she agreed because she was hoping that they could find a way to salvage their family. But unknown to Sarah, Jack had no intention of reconciliation. He prepared the lake house and removed all the evidence of his presence. He carefully arranged all furniture and objects to create the perfect scene for a tragic accident. He also bought several bottles of Sarah's favorite wine, planning to empty them to support his story of her drinking heavily. A couple of days later, Sarah arrived at the lake house. As she entered, she found Jack waiting for her in the dimly lit living room. Their conversation started calmly, with Jack apologizing and claiming he wanted to make things right. Gradually, Jack was leading the conversation toward reconciliation. He was saying that they could move past this and that he would dedicate himself to rebuilding her trust. Since Sarah was emotionally exhausted and desperate to cling to the life she had loved, she actually started to listen to him. Just as Sarah began to let her guard down, Jack's demeanor suddenly changed. His eyes widened and his face became serious. Then he said to her, "I'm sorry, Sarah, but I can't let you ruin everything." Then he lunged at her. Sarah was caught completely off guard and stumbled backward. Jack seized the opportunity and pushed her over the stairs, but Jack underestimated Sarah's survival instinct. As she fell, she grabbed onto him while her nails dug deeply into his arms, and they both fell down the stairs. They landed hard at the bottom, hurt and confused. Sarah regained consciousness and realized the true intentions of Jack. She then started screaming. Jack panicked because his perfect plan was crumbling, and he grabbed a heavy crystal vase from a nearby table and hit Sarah on her head really hard. Her head cracked, and she was dead. In the silence that followed, Jack was standing over Sarah's motionless body. Blood was coming slowly from her head, dripping into the expensive Persian rug Sarah picked out when they first bought the lake house. With shaking hands, Jack began to stage the scene. He placed empty wine bottles around Sarah's body and smeared some wine on her lips and clothes. He was so focused on perfecting his stage accident that he almost didn't hear the car pulling up to the house. He went to the window and his heart nearly stopped because that was Lily's car. She must have followed him to the house. Then the door to the house opened and Lily stepped inside. Her face became pale when she saw her mother's dead body, the blood-soaked rug, and Jack standing there with blood on his hands and clothes. She screamed from the top of her lungs, "What have you done? You killed her! You killed my mom!" Jack tried desperately to regain control of the situation. "Lily, listen to me," he reached out to her. "It was an accident. She was drunk. She fell. We can still be together. We can make this work." But Lily was beyond listening. Everything she loved was ripped away from her, and she saw Jack for what he truly was, a murderer. She then turned to run, to get help and escape this nightmare. Jack ran after her and grabbed her arm. "You can't leave. You're all I have left now." They fought through the living room, and in their struggle, they crashed into the large glass window overlooking the lake. The glass shattered and they fell through, tumbling down the rocks to the shore. Lily hit a rock with her head, and she lay still with blood coming from her hair. Jack was very hurt and cut by the glass. He pulled himself to his feet and stood over Lily's unconscious body. Everything he had done, all his careful plans, were for her, for them. And now, everything was falling apart. In the distance, he could hear sirens approaching. A neighbor must have heard them fighting and called for help. Realizing the hopelessness of his situation, Jack made one final choice. He stumbled to the edge of the dock and jumped into the dark, cold waters of the lake. When the police arrived, they found a scene of horror. One woman was dead, another seriously injured, and no sign of the man responsible. It would be 2 days before Jack's body washed up on the shore, bloated and battered by the rocks. In the months that followed, the quiet community of Chesterbrook was left to grapple with the tragedy that happened. Lily, who survived her injuries, faced years of therapy and rehabilitation. She was haunted by the guilt and the consequences of what happened because of her sick and childish actions.